Hello from Manila. My name is Rocky Guzman. I'm the Deputy Director of ARIA. I'll be focusing on a regional framework for oceans access rights and transparency in Southeast Asia. I'd like to focus first on how it could be applied in the oceans context and how it could improve ocean governance in Southeast Asia. And this looks at the prospects of a regional framework for improving transparency as a main issue in Southeast Asia and how it improves ocean governance. And just as a bit of a background, my background has been in environmental law, but mostly on oceans law and policy. So in Oceania, I've been involved with marine conservation and combating illegal fishing. And I've seen some of the problems and I identified how this could be resolved in a regional framework for ocean transparency. So that's a brief background of the motivations for this regional framework for ocean transparency. And just a quick snapshot on the SCAP data, you can see that it's really bloody. Among all the SDGs, the one in red is the one in life below water, SDG 14, and it's really regressed so much relative to the other SDGs in Asia Pacific. So this provides the context for having more interventions and focusing more on means to improve governance in their oceans in Southeast Asia and the Asia Pacific region in general. Just a quick rundown of law and environmental law. We have what we call the substantive rights, which are fundamental rights, which every person, you and me, have. It includes the right to a healthy environment, right to a healthy ocean, and right to clean air, all these that each and every one of has as an enforceable right. Then we also have these other sets of rights, which we call the procedural environmental rights, which are necessary to achieve these substantive environmental rights. So these procedural environmental rights are what we call the access rights. So these includes the three core access rights of access to information or access to environmental information, public participation that's meaningful and genuine in environmental decision making, and access to effective remedies. These are what we call access rights, and these are encapsulated from the Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration, which provides for these rights as the core and the key pillars of sound environmental governance. Now, it's very interesting that these access rights have been transformed into regional agreements, and there have been regional access rights agreements in various parts of the world, but not in Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific yet. But it's important to note that there's a starting conversation in Southeast Asia in particular to have and evolve towards a procedural environmental rights or access rights agreement in this region specifically. Now, first, what is a transparent ocean in the first place? So this is a snapshot from the platform Global Fishing Watch, which monitors fishing vessel activity, vessel tracks all over the world. Of course, it depends on whether governments disclose this data, and most of these are from industrial fishing fleets, which are required to be disclosed in the first place. But transparency in the oceans doesn't need to be limited to vessel tracks. It could also include a lot of other things like authorizations and permissions for waste importation for plastics, for instance, or catch documentation and garbage management regimes for shipping and other sea-based sources. And even what Dita said, the meeting reports of ASEAN on the oceans regional frameworks are important to have like a robust understanding of the issues in the region. So these are what envisaged in this transparent oceans framework for the region and for ASEAN. Now, for the regional access rights agreement in ASEAN or the Asia Pacific that focuses on oceans, it's important to include the oceans in that conversation. As I've said in many conversations before, it's been very terrestrial in focus, mostly on EIA, on public participation, on the resource use of forest resources, of pollution and land-based pollution, for instance, and how people can enforce or compel disclosure of data on this regard. But there hasn't been a lot of conversations on how it could be applied in the ocean space. Now, if these oceans issues are included in this framework, then that would provide the framework for these access rights to enable the people, the public, to exercise their right to the fundamental right to a healthy oceans. And this could be also done by transforming national regimes. Now, these regional agreements, such as the ESCAZO and the Aarhus agreements, have what they call compliance and implementation mechanisms that would facilitate national reform in their respective countries, party states. So this would effectively address the difficulties for national governments, especially in this region, to enact law on transparency if it's becoming too hard to make the case stakeholders to disclose data. And this is very important, especially from my experience working in an advocacy organization and pushing for disclosure of vessel tracking data, because it's if there's no legal framework, either at the regional or international level, pushing it, an external force pushing the governments and stakeholders to disclose information, it would be really hard. But in other cases, if there are, for example, regional conservation management measures compelling or requiring disclosure of vessel monitoring data for regional fisheries management organizations, for instance, then it would be easy for national governments to disclose this data and provide access to the public. Down the line, it would also set standards for compatibility and interoperability, especially if technology is involved in sharing of data, and that would enable governments and stakeholders in the ASEAN region to have the opportunity to cooperate in enforcement to combat criminality at sea. As to the public participation aspect, if we have transparent oceans, then that would provide the opportunity for everyone, for the public and civil society, to help with monitoring and surveillance. And it would really enable and help build an improved governance framework for Southeast Asia. Now, for my last slide on how these transparent national regimes, how these access right in the national level could improve the overall conditions of the oceans of Southeast Asia, it would really lead to stronger regional cooperation if these regional framework would facilitate national legal reform, and that would lead to stronger regional cooperation because now ASEAN states can heighten their enforcement efforts by exchange of tools that are transparent, for example, digital tools for information and intelligence, public data and authorizations for resource users, for the fishing industry, for waste importers, for example, for the shipping industry. And it would also lead to more cooperation in terms of enforcement itself, like inspections, public listings, alert systems, and market and port denials. Now, I'd like to end my presentation by saying that these access rights and promoting improved procedural environmental rights while enabling a transparent framework would eventually shift the burden to industry and resource users to prove compliance. And in this effect, it would make monitoring and compliance more cost effective. And as they say in transparency, sunlight is the best disinfectant. I think that this regional framework, when properly done and implemented in the region, would enable it to have an improved ocean governance for the region. And that would be great for the oceans of Southeast Asia.